September 11th, 2001, I took off from the seaplane base here at Petersburg at about 5:30, 6 o'clock in the morning, and flew out to Salmon Bay to pick up two of the fish and game techs to shuttle them into one of the lakes to do a sockeye salmon survey. I got out there to Salmon Bay and the weather was too bad to land out there. It was blowing too strong for the airplane to land in the bay. Well, I circled over the harbor a little bit there, the bay a little bit, let them know that I'd been there, and then headed back to town. I got back to town and landed, put the airplane up on the ramp, and as I was walking back to my truck to go home, a friend of mine flagged me down, had me come up to his apartment there in his hangar and watched TV. He said that an airplane had just hit one of the towers in the World Trade Center, and we were sitting there watching it on TV when the second plane hit. And then the word came down that they'd closed all the airspace in the United States. Oh, there was no more flying. So I was probably one of the last airplanes to fly that day. So today is September 11th, 2020, and it's a nice day today. About 8:45, we're taxiing out, getting ready to take off. Going to do something a little bit different today. Going to fly across the mountains here to the east of us and go over by Taltan Lake. We're not really doing any surveying, it's mostly just an orientation flight for the new area biologist so he can kind of get an eye on the area that he kind of manages. He doesn't really manage that area, but that's where the fish go, that the sockeye salmon go, that we manage here. They pass through this area and go up there into Canada. Coming up on Sockeye Islands, just outside of Petersburg. Going to cross over Frederick Sound here to Point Agassiz, which is a little point sticking out there just to the right of the float. And then we're going to climb up and climb up and climb up and cross over the Alaska Range. Kind of an undercast here, blocking the view of Point Agassiz and the Thomas Bay area. I'm at about 2,000 feet, a little better climbing. And I could have got underneath it. We could have seen the ground better if I'd have got underneath it about 700-800 feet, but we got to climb up to about 6,000, 7,000 feet to cross the mountains here. So I'm just in a continuous climb here, gaining altitude to climb up the glacier and over the top of the mountains. I'm at about 2,800 feet here, coming up to the bluffs along the edge of Thomas Bay. These mountains come up to 2,500 feet or a little bit higher right here, and then go almost vertically down to sea level, and then they drop down to about 1,000 feet deep in the water right here below us. You can see a little lake now that's coming up on our left there that's formed by the receding toe of Baird Glacier. You can see the North Baird Glacier there in the distance, straight over the float. We're not going to go up that glacier. We're actually going to go to the right a little bit of that and then head up towards the right just a little bit from straight ahead. We're going to cross over this ridge, and then there's another gully there, a big valley that goes up. It's Scenery Lakes, Scenery Cove. And then we cross over the next ridge, and then we're over Baird Glacier. There's over an hour of recorded video at actual time here. It's too long to watch at one time, but I don't really want to speed this up to 32 times or to a big high speed like I've done in the past, because this is just too fantastic of a scenery to see. And so I'm going to double the speed on it a little bit, maybe increase it a little bit more and do some cuts on it and stuff. But here we go. It's a beautiful flight. We're coming over the last ridge into the actual Baird Glacier right now. I'm going to fly up the Baird Glacier as far as you can see in the distance. I'm about 3,500 feet here, a little bit more than that, and I've got to climb up to, like I said, 6,500 to 7,000 to cross over the top up there. These glaciers flow downhill just like a river, just like water, basically a river of ice. And they have some of the same characteristics as water. And all of the rivers kind of flowing down and meeting each other, and they have a convergent zone, and they've got rough edges where they have rocks and reefs underneath them. They form kind of waterfalls or rapids there. You can see the broken ice there on the side just underneath the right now. So something a little bit unique right here coming up on the right. You can see the dirt path coming down from the glacier, the Baird Glacier, coming all the way down ahead of us. And instead of the one to the right of us flowing into it, it kind of turns and flows down into there. So that's kind of a unique spot up here. That valley back in there is actually lower than the surrounding terrain. I think the head end of it might even be lower than sea level, I don't know. But the glacier, part of it, splits off there and turns and goes down that valley to the right and ends down in there, and it's kind of forming a lake in there. It's kind of a unique spot. Everything else combines, all the side channels and stuff, the little glaciers off to the sides all come in to the main glacier and feed into it. All the dark spots that you can see there are gravel and falls and stuff like that have come off of the mountains around it. Some of those have come down there for 10 or 15 miles. We got a lot of places around here in southeast Alaska where you fly along the beaches or in different places and you'll find a rock that doesn't belong there. And that's kind of how they get there. Those rocks all come down on top of the ice here, and then when the ice calves off into the salt water, a lot of times those rocks will be floating on top or embedded in the ice or something like that, and they'll get carried a long ways in the currents and the winds and be deposited far from where they originated. I've climbed up to a little over 5,000 feet here. I've still got a ways to go to get enough altitude to safely clear the pass ahead of us. I'm not going to clear the peaks and stuff around us, but we got a little pass that we'll go through here, and I need about 6,500 to safely go through it. We're up about 6,000 feet now and still climbing. I climb up to just a little less than 7,000. The pass that we're going to go through is to the left up there. You can see how the glacier splits up ahead of us, and like that loaf of bread is laying up there in the middle and goes to the left, and that's the direction we're going to go. So we're just about to the top now of the ice field. You can see how white the glacier is now. That's snow from this last season. That's what makes a glacier, is we get 100 feet of snow up here in the winter, and 40, 50, 60 feet of it melt, and it leaves a little bit left, and that soaks up all of the water and stuff from the, or a lot of the water anyway, from the melt off. And then as the next year builds up on top of that, it just so slowly packs it down and compresses it, and it freezes that water in it, and it becomes ice. Anyway, we're just about to the top. Like I said, we're not going to go over the top of the peaks. We're going to go through a little pass up here, but this is just about to the top, and we're across the line now. We're in Canada here. Over the divide now, heading downhill. Actually, I don't descend any. I'm going to stay up here about 6,000 feet for a good portion of the trip till we get over into the Taltan area. But we're over the divide. Everything behind us drained down in the Pacific Ocean directly, right into Frederick Sound. This now all drains down into the Stikine River system. Well, this valley here drains down into the Taltan River, and the Taltan River drains down into the Stikine River. We'll follow this one down to the Taltan, and then we'll turn to the right a little bit and follow that down to another little pass that takes us over to Taltan. From the summit of that pass, we flew down a tributary to the Taltan River, and then we've been flying downstream on that river ways, and now we're going to fly up one of the little tributaries here and cross over the pass into the Taltan drainage. I was expecting to see some Rocky Mountain sheep on these mountains as we came down through here. We didn't see any. Of course, they're hard to see against the dark background or against the background because they're a dark color. But when we crossed over this ridge, we did see some mountain goats. Now, we see lots of mountain goats above Petersburg, so it's not unusual, but there was the first bunch of animals that we'd seen over this trip. Now we're crossing over the divide here now from the Taltan River drainage into the Taltan River drainage. And we'll follow this drainage down to Taltan Lake, and then we'll go down down that outlet from Taltan Lake down to the Taltan River. As we come up here, the area ahead of us there that you can see the mountains were burned a few years ago, and they're starting to come back now. There's a lot of green in them now, but there's still a lot of skeletonized trees there, and the whole countryside is still pretty black. You can see Taltan Lake coming into view ahead of us there, just almost straight ahead. It's a pretty good sized lake. There's several lakes there and several little bodies of water around there. It's pretty rocky there, so there's not much depth to the soil in that area. The sockeye salmon come up the Taltan River and then come up the Taltan River into Taltan Lake. The Canadian Fish and Game, they have a weir there on the lake where they count the fish coming in, and then they catch a certain amount of the fish and milk them for their eggs, which are then transported down to Snettisham, which is just south of Juneau, in a fish hatchery there, and they're raised there in the fish hatchery and then brought back up into Taltan Lake and released. So some of the fish are left in the lake system to raise naturally, and some of them are enhanced by being raised in the fish hatchery. This is pretty much the east side of the coastal range, or the Cascade Mountains as they're called, down in the lower 48. The Taltan River here kind of divides that. Out to the east of us is a high plateau. I think it's called Stikine Plateau, and it's all lava flow. It's real deep lava on top of everything. The plateau is about 3,000 to 4,000 foot elevations, and there are cinder cones and things like that sticking up out of it. We're going to circle over what we think is the capture site, the place where they catch the fish to milk them for the eggs. It's right there in the lower right hand corner, right there on the edge of the lake. We're going to fly over that and circle over that a little bit and take a look at it. We're not going to stop here, and then we'll fly over the camp and then fly on down the river. It took about an hour and 15 to an hour and 20 minutes to get from Petersburg, climb over the top, and get over here to Taltan Lake. Now we're going to follow down the river now, all the way to the Stikine River, and that's going to take about 25 or 30 minutes just to get down from here down to the Stikine River. And we still got about 3.5 hours of flying to do. We're going to follow the Stikine River back out to the saltwater and back out to Petersburg. We do a little bit of fooling around there, looking at a couple of things, but basically, like I said, the trip in was about an hour and a half, and the trip out is about 3.5 hours.